Hey everybody, it's Sarah, and today we are making brownies. But these aren't just any old brownies. These brownies have a cheesecake swirl in them, and they're going to be so awesome, it's going to knock your socks off. So stick around, we're going to make them together. So these brownies are a riff on some brownies that I made earlier this year using sweet potato, and the sweet potato is kind of an extra moisture thing, and it's an extra binder, and it adds nice texture to the brownie, and all around they're super good. I have sweet potatoes, but I also have a ton of winter squash, and so I baked one up this weekend. And so instead of the sweet potato, today we're using winter squash as a substitute. So should be similar in texture and kind of taste and everything. So we'll see how it turns out. And in my sweet potato brownie recipe for the cheesecake swirl, I use peanut butter. But today I decided to try something different. So I have some wine jelly that I got from my mother-in-law, and I don't use it very often. It's kind of weird on peanut butter sandwiches, and I don't make a lot of biscuits or just eat jelly on bread and things like that. So I thought, well, maybe I can add it to the peanut butter swirl and also to the brownie batter itself, and we'll have a wine-infused brownie. I mean, that sounds perfectly legit to me, right? I mean, I know my girlfriends and I eat brownies and drink wine together, and they pair quite nicely. So it sounds good in my head. Whether it's going to translate to something that's awesomely edible, I have no idea, but we're going to give it a shot. I'm going to use all of this chocolate bar. I'm going to melt half of it to use in the brownie batter, and then the rest of it I'm going to chop up, and then we'll stir it into the brownies so you'll have nice little chocolatey chunks in there. So you have to be really careful when you're melting chocolate. If you're going to do it in the microwave, you need to put it in for small little bursts and then stir it. And if you put it in for 20 seconds and stir it and it seems like it's not really doing anything, that's okay. The chocolate is heating up, it's just not melting right away. So then you put it in for another 20 seconds, and then by the time you stir it that second time, it will start to melt and turn smooth. So you can see after 20 seconds, this really hasn't done much. That's okay. The heat is incorporating into the chocolate. Stick it in for another 20 seconds, and the second time that you pull it out, it will start to melt. And the mailman just came, so I'm gonna go check the mail. Okay, so before I even stir this, the chocolate is beginning to melt in the bowl. So you just stir it gently. And we're gonna put it back in. The key to melting chocolate is to be patient. All right, I think this is gonna do it. So if I keep stirring these last little bits of my chocolate bar in here, they're gonna go ahead and melt. The other thing you can do is break up your chocolate into smaller pieces, and it will melt much faster than this did. So to this chocolate, we're gonna add 1.5 cups of buttercup squash puree, which is one of those little turban shaped squashes. And I cooked it this weekend, and yes, I reused my containers. So no, this is not really potato salad. 1.5 cups-ish. We're gonna stir our chocolate into our winter squash. There's a lot going on in the kitchen today because we're doing a gift exchange with the girls tonight. So I'm making focaccia breads, and I'm making these brownies, and I'm caramelizing onions on the stove for one of the focaccias, and then I'm melting the jelly. So there's a lot going on. So I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm not even going to measure, just kind of guesstimating. So I'm going to add 2/3 cup of vanilla Greek yogurt. All right, we're doing 2/3 cup sugar too. So we're going to add a teaspoon vanilla extract, a little bit of salt, about 1/4 teaspoon. Did you know salt helps bring out the sweetness? Without the salt, the sweetness doesn't taste balanced. And I know this for a fact because sometimes when I forget to add salt to things that are sweet, they don't taste right. I'm also adding in 1/3 cup of, this is quick cook oatmeal. And even though I have some chocolate in here already, I'm still gonna do about 1/3 cup of cocoa powder. Stir this in gently. Okay, so last couple of things before these go in the oven. I've got 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of water to this. I'm gonna let it sit for a couple of minutes while I finish chopping up my chocolate bar. So that's gonna sit and thicken up. I am gonna use an egg in the batter, but my recipe calls for 2 eggs, and my girls are laying, well, a girl I think is laying. I'm getting an egg like every other day, but the last 2 or 3 days we haven't gotten an egg, so I'm gonna cut back on the eggs. So I'm gonna use just 1 in the brownie batter itself, then I'll use 1 in the cheesecake mix, and I'm gonna use the flaxseed as kind of like an egg substitute. So I'm going to finish chopping up my chocolate bar here. We're going to stir this in. The last wet ingredient we're going to stir in, besides this flaxseed, is some melted wine jelly. So I'm going to do about 3-4 tablespoons, see what we've got. I'm going to pull it out into a separate container and let it cool just a minute so that it doesn't cause the chocolate to melt, because I don't want my little pieces in here to melt. Ooh, let's do an egg. Before we add in the jelly, I'm going to add my egg in. Let's go ahead and stir in the flaxseed, and we'll stir in our wine jelly. So there's actually no alcohol in here because during the jelly making process you have to bring it to a boil, and so any alcohol that was in the wine has long since evaporated. And wine and chocolate pair well together, so I'm thinking this should be a home run. Time to add some flour. I'm going to add a heaping 1/3 cup. And while we're here, I'm adding a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And I'm adding a full teaspoon of baking powder. You want to just get this flour incorporated. Don't overdo it. All right, now I'm going to get my brownie pan. I'm going to spray it with a non-stick spray. All right, we're just going to pour all of this in. Just kind of spread it out. Okay, we're gonna set those aside, and then we're going to work on our cheesecake mixture. I've got an 8-ounce block of cream cheese. I'm just gonna take my mixer and stir this up, make it nice and smooth, and then to this we're gonna add a little bit of vanilla, an egg, and our wine jelly, and that's it. Okay, so for this cheesecake, 1 egg, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, and the rest of my jelly, which is about a 1/2 cup, maybe a 1/3 cup, somewhere in there. I'm gonna take my knife, I'm just gonna drag it through in random swirly patterns. Try to incorporate this into the brownies. Now you want to leave some brownie swirl plain, and you want to leave some cheesecake swirl kind of plain. This I'm going to throw in the oven for about 30 minutes. We'll check it and see how it's doing. I don't think it's going to be done in 30 minutes. I think it's going to take probably 35 or 40, but we'll see. Okay, these just came out of the oven, and it is about to be complete pandemonium in here in a few minutes because the girls just got here, and then we're dog sitting for 2 weeks, and my friend's gonna bring her dog over shortly. So these are super hot, and they're probably not gonna taste anything like what they're gonna taste like when they're cooled. Here we go. Here's hoping I don't burn my tongue off. I think they're gonna be pretty good. I think they're gonna be best cold. I can taste the squash, but it's not a bad taste. But what are you gonna do? Maybe I'll need a second brownie. Happy solstice. That's like my favorite day of the year because you know what? That means the days start getting longer, and I so look forward to that every fall and winter. Okay, I'm out of here. Time to go eat dinner. Ciao. One eggy. So nice to have fresh eggs again.